Hello and welcome to Cloud Forest Vibes. My name's Bobby, and this is how I grow orchids and carnivorous plants. Hello and welcome to Cloud Forest Vibes. So today I've pulled out a section of plants to talk to you guys about that I have absolutely struggled with. From the moment I've got them, literally all I've done is struggle. So I want to pull them out. We're going to have a little chat about each one, and if I don't knock my camera over, and hopefully shed a little bit of light on what I've done wrong, and hopefully again on some of the things I'm doing right, because they haven't died yet. Some of them are doing better, some of them are doing worse, some of them really haven't done a damn thing in like almost 2 years. So time for a change maybe, but again, let's get right into it. We'll take a close-up look at each one, and we will have a chat about what plant it is and exactly how I've almost killed it so far. So thanks for joining. I do appreciate you guys, and yeah, here we go. So the first plant we have up here is my Mormollica Schweinfurthiana. I got this from Equigenera in the spring, and I have really struggled. There was actually 2 pieces of this plant at one point in time. One of them is completely done, completely dead. This section was a little bit stronger. It pushed out this growth and this growth pretty recently, but not one root. These pseudobulbs are getting kind of shriveled. I'm a little bit nervous about it. I've recently taken it off and remounted it on the same mount with a little bit of extra moss on it. I'm letting it gently dry between waterings. It seems to really be appreciating it. Before, the first growth died because it rotted. It got too moist, it stayed too moist for too long. There was nowhere for the water to go. It wasn't getting absorbed because, again, it came with 0 roots from Equigenera. But as you can see, I've somehow managed to hold on to this growth. So the proof is in the pudding. I guess what I need to do, my suggestion is to keep this gently moist. If it doesn't have active roots, if it's not actively growing really hard and able to suck up the water and redistribute it through itself, it needs to be kept just moist but never dry. Kind of a really fine balance. I give this thing about a 1-2 shot mist every other day, every day if it gets really hot, and it has really started to pull through. But as you see, this plant is sad. It is not a happy plant, not one of my better ones, and I'm just hoping that I can get this thing to hang on. It does like to grow a little bit cooler than I like to grow it, but I'm hoping to solve that issue as well sometime over the winter. Anyhow, that's my Mormollica rufescens. Again, it came with no roots. I let it get too wet. I killed half of it, and then I pulled all the moss off the mount. It dried out too much, really messed up the roots, or what few roots it did try to produce with this growth. And now I'm just hoping that I've got a kind of a fine balance between too moist and too dry for the upcoming growth and anything else that comes from here on out. I will keep you updated, but this is one of my sadder plants for sure right now. Next door, I think we can just slide this over. This right here is my Cranslinellia anfracta. This plant was in a pot, keyword was, and it just never did much. It grew, it got sad, it grew, it got sad, it grew, it got sad. So I was talking to my friend Joe over at Perpetual Irish at Instagram, who has this plant growing spectacularly. It's almost always in bloom for him. It's a really cool plant, and I took his advice. I went ahead and put it on a mount. I am not keeping it too moist. I'm letting it gently dry between waterings, again because it hardly has any roots at all. I think this plant likes to grow cooler than I am able to grow it. It does like pretty bright light, which is why you see the yellow light damage all over it, because I was growing it too bright as well for too long. And yeah, so I basically did everything I could to kill this plant. It's a strong plant. It is growing on despite my best efforts of killing it, and it has 1 and 2 new growths just starting at the base down here since being mounted. So I'm hoping for a really good fall and winter with this plant. I'm really hoping to see it flourish and push on and just do better, because I really want to see these blooms one day. So you might be able to grow this potted, you might be able to grow it mounted, but for me, mounting so far has been the way. It is acting sad, but happier than it was, so that's key. Sliding down even farther yet, I'll just do it this way. This plant right here is my Bulbaphyllum Caletii. This is another example of a plant that was doing really well when I got it, and is doing absolutely terrible now that it's in my care. It has put up 1, 2, and 3 new growths for me. They grow to a midget size and they promptly dump their leaf. It's almost always around this time of year. I believe, again, being an intermediate grower, I think this grows at the cooler side of intermediate, and it just gets a little too warm in my tent for this plant. Let's see. I don't know much about it. I don't want to give any advice because I still haven't nailed it. It grows mounted, as you see. It has pushed on some roots, as you see. But no matter what I do, every time it pushes on a new growth, it grows a little miniature leaf, and then I go in one day and it's yellow and ready to die. So Bulbaphyllum Caletii may or may not be with me much longer. Honestly, it is on its last chance right now. But yeah, I struggle. I struggled with all Bulbaphyllums at first. I grew them way too moist. This one I let gently dry between waterings, and I'm very careful not to keep it too moist. But as you see, I am failing. I have done nothing but fail with this plant. So Bulbaphyllum Caletii is still a mystery to me, but hopefully we can get it together one day, or it is going somewhere else. Now, just to the right of that, we have my Neophenesia Falcata. Now, the original section of this plant is this section. Terrible. Can't see it very well, can you? This section with 2 leaves left and its main stem. Again, I tried really hard to kill this plant. It got moisture down in the crown, it got crown rot, it started to die back. I fixed it, I plucked out the next leaf, I stuffed it full of cinnamon, good to go. Then it happened again, it got more crown rot. So this plant used to be about this tall. So it started rotting and rotting and rotting, and I had to amputate a few more leaves. I stuffed the crown with cinnamon, and it just sat for about a year and did absolutely nothing. Spinning it around, you'll see last year it put up this new growth, and later on in the year it put this new growth up, which are actually managing to stay healthy. I am very cautious about getting water anywhere near this plant. I cannot bottom water it, but what I do is I just water from about here down, and I let the plants, I let the moss soak up the rest of the moisture. Under no circumstances does this plant ever get sprayed, top watered. If I'm watering something around it, near it, over it, next to it, this plant gets pulled out, it gets put on the shelf so it can stay dry. And that is my best advice for this one. I have finally, I think, gotten a grasp of growing these pretty well. As you see, I have turned it around. I did kill another version, the pink flowered version, the Shutanu. This is your standard Neo Falcata. I let it bloom, I've cut the spike, and it is growing on again. I'm hoping that these shoots divide, or that maybe this one pushes out another side shoot so we can get a better established plant, because I do know that this plant is going to probably not be with us much longer. It is going to be completely up to whatever divisions or side shoots that it pushes out to carry this plant on. So that is my Neo. It used to be very sad, and now it is just kind of sad. So a little bit of progress there. The next plant on my list is my Cycopsy Lamigni. This plant was doing awesome when I got it from Tarzan. It was twice the size. It had 2 brand new points of growth, and it promptly rotted off. I left it on the cork tile for too long. I got moisture down inside the growing sheath of the first new growth and the second new growth, and slowly but surely they rotted off. the rot from the top growth infected the actual main rhizome of the plant, so I had to chop it another bulb back, which left me with these 3 bulbs. I mounted it on this cork bark bear cork, and happily it has pushed out a new growth right here. It's not full size, but it's still growing, I believe. It's got a couple new roots that it's pushed out, so I think I've saved it. But let me tell you, this one is fussy. It doesn't want to stay dry. It doesn't want to be moist. It doesn't want to be covered up at all. It doesn't want to be too bright. It wants humidity. Basically everything that's a complete and total pain in the butt, this orchid is and wants. So having that said, it's got an awesome flower, and I can't wait to see it, which is the absolute only reason I'm tolerating it being such a pain, because it is just a nightmare. Cycopsy Lamigni, again, really neat little plant, but it is absolutely a pain in the butt to grow. It does not like anything. Another absolute pain in the butt to grow is this thing next to it, which is my very sad, amazingly, terribly, horrifically sad Dendrobium Sinili. This plant, I know, kind of wants it a bit cooler than I grow it. Believe it or not, I was looking at it today, and yes, it is finally on this growth right here, starting its next new growth. So that'll be its 3rd new growth in my care. Yeah, I really don't know what to say about this plant. I actually asked Roger about this plant not very long ago on his Thursday Viewers Orchid Questions, and he gave me some really great advice. He knows this plant better than anybody. He has probably the nicest specimen I've ever seen, and I am really hoping that I can get it turned around. After watching his video, I decided to move it into a brighter spot. I kind of have it positioned like him in a very bright spot, but with its back toward the window, so it's getting really bright indirect light, and it's also directly in the line of fire now of a computer fan. So since that video a couple weeks ago, it has started to, I guess, push out this new growth. So thank you, Roger. That is awesome. I owe that one to you, buddy, for sure. So this is my sad Sinili, and hopefully one day we'll be looking at this plant again, and it will be much, much happier. Right next door, this little guy right here is my Isabelia Virginalis. This was a stick-mounted plant from Andy's when I got it, and I promptly, immediately upon getting it, tore it off the stick, put it on a mount with moss, and I rotted about 2/3 of this plant. It was much larger when I got it. It is now two really small sections. They are growing. It absolutely hates the summertime, and that's all I can really say about it. I do not have a grasp of this yet. It seems to like bare bark. It does not want to stay moist for any amount of time. I give it a spritz every day or every other day, depending on the heat. And you got to be careful, because if you get the front of it wet when it's pushing out new growths, the new growths will rot. I have rotted 2 new growths already this year. I rotted several last year. And this plant is just a fussy pain. It is a terrible pain in my butt. So I love it. Get out of here, babe. Oh my god, my dog. I love it. I think it's a really cool orchid. I will keep trying to grow this plant, but I really have not done well with it. It bloomed shortly after I got it from Andy. I'll throw a picture up of that. But it is sad, so that is another one of my definite most saddest plants. Next door, again, this is Epidendrum porpax, and again I have done nothing but struggle with this plant. I mounted it too quickly. It didn't have any roots growing or any new growths or anything like that, and I've killed the back half of this plant pretty much completely. It's got 1, 2, 3 new growths growing for me on this side. This is another one that likes to be moist, but it doesn't want to be moist for very long at all. It likes almost a moist, dry cycle. It's finally growing some roots. I've had this plant about 2 years, believe it or not, and it really just doesn't like it. It doesn't like my environment. It doesn't like the care I'm giving it. I gave it too much light. I didn't give it enough light. It was too wet. It was too dry. I've done everything wrong with this plant. This is another one. So the fact that it's here, it is a strong plant for sure. It's got the will to live, if nothing else. But it really is, for me at least, a pretty tough plant to grow. I'm considering taking it off this mount, but not yet. It'll be a little while, maybe springtime, and trying to give it another chance in something else. But this is the only way I've been able to get any kind of growth on this plant and keep it happy. And finally, we'll have to step out again. This here is my Dendrobium gracile, and if you remember, this plant was in bloom a few months ago, doing spectacularly. It had 4 growths. They were growing strong. Each one had a bloom spike on it, and that is these most recent leaves right here. So they did well. Where I failed was it started to push on its new growths. 1 here, the little stump here, and 2 back on the back side of the plant, which promptly rotted off. This one rotted, and this one was starting to rot. I cut the tip of it off. I pulled all the moss away from it, and it is barely hanging on by the skin of its teeth. So the moral of this story is dendrocolumns love to be moist, but again, just like a masdevallia or anything else that grows that way, there is a very fine line. If you notice the orientation of this plant on this mound, it is toward the bottom. All the moisture pools, water runs off the plant itself when I water it, and I believe that was the downfall of this plant. I am lazy. I still have not changed it. That is on my list of things to do this weekend while I have some time. But I need to take this plant and I need to slide it up toward the top of this mount so it is not down in the drainage area of it. And I need to make sure that when I put moss back on it, that I do not crowd the plant whatsoever. They do like to grow moist, but just like many other orchids, almost any other orchid, if you get the base of the plant too wet, or if it stays wet for too long, it'll rot and it will die. So that is my plan with the Dendrobium gracile. I will probably take you guys along for that. I have done a lot of remounting, a lot of repotting, and a lot of other stuff this weekend that I haven't got on film. So there's a few, this one being one in particular, my Brassivola subulifolia that's on the stick mount, and a few others that I really want to take you along for while I remount them or unmount them, and we'll go from there. But that is my video for today, guys. Let me back out. Well, that's it for my video today, guys. Thank you so much for joining in. I've got all my fussy little brats put away, and I am just hoping that they do better throughout the next season. I will keep you updated. I might actually start a little series of these videos for other people who struggle and show you guys everything I do to try to overcome all the different issues that I'm having with all these different plants. So I hope that sounds like a good idea to you guys. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you so much as always for joining in and watching my video. Until next time, happy growing, and I hope you guys are all staying safe. This plant right here is my Bulbaphyllum. Oh, knock everything over. Oh, never going to be the same. Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Thank you.